Welcome to the Analytics Power Hour. Analytics topics covered conversationally and sometimes with explicit language.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's the Analytics Power Hour, and this is episode 304. There's no shortage of high-level thought leaders that want to explain this or that about AI, and we're not opposed. But what about boots on the ground? What are people actually experiencing when they're using AI in their day-to-day? I don't know that any of us claim to be AI experts, or at least I didn't check anybody's LinkedIn profiles, but I don't think any of us have updated them to that extent.
Updating that? No.
All right. Well, all right. There goes that claim. But we have spent some pretty significant time in the tools, and we've got a pretty good background in this podcast of data and analytics. And I thought it'd be fun to talk amongst ourselves about some of the experiences actually using AI, the good, the bad, and the just okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get into it. And speaking of AI experts, let me introduce my co-host, Tim Wilson, AI thought leader.
It's actually Tim Wilson, MAI, like a master of AI. I'm going to start putting that at the end of my.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. And Julie Hoyer, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm good. I'm excited to hear some of these war stories.
Do you get introduced to clients as an expert in AI?
Oh, thank God I do not.
Okay.
So not an AI strategist?
Nope, not yet.
In consulting firms, a lot of times as an expert, you sort of just get slung in as an expert in whatever the topic is about. And it's like, that's actually inaccurate. Let's kick off the whole conversation by just chopping that tree down. All right.
NPR or The Daily Show and, our AI correspondent.
That's right. And I'm Michael Helbig. All right, so let's dive into it. I think maybe a good kickoff is just set the tables, so to speak, is maybe let's just talk a little bit about the types of AI tools we've used, what LLMs, just very high level, very quickly, maybe just go around. We'll just chat about that, and then let's dive into more specifics. Yeah. So
hey, why don't you go first?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Tim.
Flip those tables.
So I've been using AI since whenever ChatGPT 3 came out. But I would say obviously using a ton of chat AI LLMs. So that's GPT, Gemini, Anthropic's Claude. Do a fair amount of coding on Codex and Claude, have experimented with some other stuff too. And then on the agentic AI side of things, I have a little Hermes bot doing little things for me using GLM 5.2 currently. So that's more sort of the latest and greatest. So I publish code to GitHub. I do things like that. And by me, I mean AI does that. Which is, it's true. I think my first GitHub commit ever happened after I started using AI. So it's definitely.
It opened the door.
It opened the door to a set of possibilities I had hitherto lain dormant. All right. Okay, Julie, what about you?
Me. Okay. My list is not as impressive as yours, Michael, but similarly, I've used ChatGPT more for personal stuff since it came out. I was interested, of course, like anybody, but more so through work, and more of the stuff that we'll probably end up discussing today I've done through Gemini and then Claude. So those are kind of my two main ones. Again, the easy foot in the door, I think the place everybody starts. That's where I'm at.
Nice. No, that's good. Tim?
So, I platform wise, I'm kind of across the big three, the Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. I've gravitated much. I would say I've gone deeper in the Claude stack, and as so many people out there saying people who are just using it for chat, they're missing the boat. And so I've kind of pushed myself. I feel like in the Claude world, I've actually used Claude Code beyond just using chat to help me write code. I've gotten into Claude Code a bit. I've done some stuff with Cowork, which is the stuff I've done with Cowork has been mostly podcast related stuff. So that's a little meta, but I feel like I'm hitting a point where I'm starting to sort of understand the distinctions between those. And on the Gemini front, that's kind of like I've been underwhelmed by it. But outside of chat, I think I've played with gems, which I remember when Julie, you I think last called gems multiple years ago. You're like, gems are cool. And I think it was another like year or two before I actually
I was like,
dealt with one.
I wrote down like,
my hot take.
What are gems?
Gems.
But I mean, just a quick one, which isn't even really in my list. But speaking of gems, Jim Stern at Marketing Analytics Summit talked about AI, using AI for like training junior analysts and how to like engage with stakeholders. And at the time I had a reaction that was like, but the humanity, how do you learn to do this? And since then I've had the opportunity to work with a couple of gyms that are purely there to simulate client interactions. And it's been, even though I can read the instructions and I know what's going on, like the realistic level, even to the point of punching record, like, so I'm like, Jim Stern, I know you regularly listen to this. I've now like done that and I am converted that, wow, that's a hell of a tiny little application, but it's really impressed me.
Yeah, that situation made me sweat. The one that Tim, you like took the base one from, I can't remember who made the original. Was it
Ryan
Val
DuPont?
spun it up? Ryan DuPont? Ryan DuPont spun up the original one at Further, and then you took it and tweaked it and made like that second iteration. But when you sent it to us to try out, I was like, whoa, I'm feeling like a little like, the pressure to respond. It was good.
So that was like a wild little light bulb to say, oh, this is like really raising stress level, but in a safe environment. And I was like, ooh, I'm on board. So that was a very eye-opening one. But sorry, I went to a specific example that wasn't even on my list. But
yeah, Tim,
that's what I do.
Save it for the next step of the process.
It's not in the outline.
That's right. No, well, that is what we're getting into next is sort of like, okay, so let's talk a little bit about projects we've done. And you kind of mentioned, Tim, the podcast, and that has been pretty fertile ground for a couple of us to try, what I feel like is a low stakes way to try stuff out. Cause it's sort of like, okay, it's not my business. It's not a client. It's a podcast and we've got real work that we're doing. But like, if it totally fails, like we can just throw it away and nobody has to know about it. But some stuff has actually stuck around. And I think that's kind of interesting and maybe informative in a way of like, yeah, if you're not started yet on specific things, could you find something even sort of outside of your work that still would be a good use? Well,
and can we talk, because this was over a year ago that was one where I headed down the path. I think I was just using ChatGPT to help me write Python. Python's not my strong suit, but I needed it because I was basically trying to save us some money and shorten some time frames on the transcription. So it started with like one Python script that ultimately got pushed into Colab, but it was purely like, help me write a script. I'm taking the code you're giving me, putting it in VS Code, going back and forth, kind of following along with what it's doing, which was kind of a chat-based version. So that was like, I don't know, that was vibe coding because I was generating code that is still Python code that we run in Colab. And we have 3 or 4 of those for different reasons, different purposes. But you did a different form of vibe coding for the podcast when it comes to actually developing an app. Like, is it worth having you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, well, there's a couple things we could talk about. One of which our listeners can actually access, which is the very first, this is the very first coding, one of the very first coding things I ever did with AI, which was back at the end of 2025, which is crazy because that feels like such a long time ago, but it's really not that long ago.
Yeah.
It's like so long ago. It was like a year ago. No, it was 8 months ago. But no, we had all the transcripts from the podcast over the years. We've got and I just started thinking about the fact that it's like, oh, well, AI is really good at like reading through docs and stuff like that, I was like, wouldn't it be cool to create a little AI library for the podcast using all the transcripts over the years? And so that got the idea started. And then I did a company hackathon with Stacked Analytics. We all went out and just did AI work for couple of days. And so I picked that as one of my projects and built a little custom GPT that basically the work or the underlying stuff behind it was sort of giving me a chance to learn about concepts like RAG and vector DB and stuff like that, which are sort of organizing concepts that AI kind of accesses or chunks up data. Probably not as relevant now, the way that context windows have expanded and things like that. So, but for that time, like it was kind of useful to like figure out, okay, how do I get all of the transcripts in one place? So in this case, a Google Cloud storage bucket. And then how do I move that into a vector DB so I use Cloudflare to do that. And then how do I move that back across into a JSON schema that a custom GPT can talk to. And so like building all that out and building out the flow of that was really the hard work. But it was kind of very useful because anytime you're dealing with permissions in Google Cloud, if you're not super familiar with that platform and setting those up, like that's a good thing to learn about. You definitely want to know how that stuff works. And it was good. It was a really good experience because, it took a long time to figure out, but it actually then produced something that's like, hey, that's actually pretty useful. And actually, if you go to ChatGPT and you go look at GPTs, you can find it as the Analytics Power Hour librarian, and it's available right now. So you can actually go find it and then ask it questions about the podcast, which is really circular because this right now will be recorded, transcribed, and then available at some point in that custom GPT. Weird. Tim, your company launches a new checkout and conversions suddenly drop. I mean, what's your first move?
Well, open 17 tabs, blame Safari, and schedule a meeting called Tracking Investigation Urgent.
Or try this one on, connect the AI assistant you already use to your Stape account through the Stape MCP server.
That sounds less traditional.
Yeah, but you could ask it to check the server-side container, validate the tracking domain, compare usage before and after launch, break down activity by browser or client.
So it can help answer, did customers stop buying, or did our measurement just stop measuring?
Exactly. And you can also review daily traffic, see which domains are generating requests, and check for unexpected usage or possible surcharges.
Fewer tabs, faster answers, and maybe that urgent meeting becomes an email.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Fair. Click the link in the show description to learn more about the new Stape MCP server. Michael, what if your dashboard could do more than just sit there looking colorful and asking everyone to interpret it?
Excuse me. That dashboard took 6 months, 14 meetings, and at least one resignation.
Oh boy. Well, Prism's new app builder turns an idea into a complete interactive application right inside your workspace.
Okay, so I just describe what I need and Prism builds the app?
Yep. You can review the spec, you can edit it, and keep refining the same app in plain English.
Ooh, so no rebuilding everything because someone asked for one tiny change that somehow requires a new data model.
Exactly. You can also share the app with anyone through a link.
Ooh, useful, flexible, and no 12-week BI backlog. Frankly, it's a little disrespectful to the traditional process.
Well, Ask Why is looking for people who want to replace a BI dashboard with an application without handling the migration themselves.
Ooh, so point the agent at your dashboard, Ask Why reads the logical layer, and builds it as a flexible, extensible application.
That's it. Sign up at askwhy.ai. That's ask-y.ai. Use code APH to jump to the top of that wait list.
Boy, I like the sound of this. Give your dashboard a promotion. It's been through enough.
Which brings up, because you built it, you kind of hacked it together. You're like, hey guys, I built this. And then and we were playing around with it, this is so cool. And then the immediate question was well, is it going to stay updated? Because it's do we want a snapshot? And that then sent us down a path, which I think is also representative, because then the work I was doing on the transcription and needing to get, I guess I'd already done some stuff where it was going into markdown files with historical stuff, but then it wound up needing to move into a different process that was a combination of cowork and Python scripts to say, oh, we've got to coordinate between these two things. Like, I mean, literally just today, I just processed an episode, and part of what it does is there's a handoff. Like the end of this one process is going to drop an additional markdown file in that folder. And then the GPT, that process you built, is going to be looking and picking it up. And you were actually surprised a couple of months ago. You're like, I don't even think that's working.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what's the most recent episode? And then it get pulled up. I'm like, it's working.
Yeah.
It's going.
Which is great, because I didn't build the next thing on top of that, which is like monitoring and data freshness checks in my GCP storage, which you would do if you were building something for a data purpose, and have built for other things. So, but yeah. That's the nice thing about, podcast related things. You can just sort of work on it when you want to, and then not update it later so that Tim gets really frustrated.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of the permissions part that you were running into, Michael. So one of the things I most recently tried to do, honestly, this was inspired from our conversation with Rob Colley actually recently, where he was saying, we're the data builders, and, we're the people that are going to end up going in, again, using AI for more than just the chat and doing more than just analysis in it. And so I was trying to get into more of like, could I go use Claude Code? Could I build an interface, an app, something that refreshes? And so from a lot of what you guys were just saying, I was inspired to go and try it for this learning community that I run at work every Friday. It's called The Guild. And we have 183 recorded episodes, or at least sessions that have happened, that we have like a drive folder for, Tim, which I was like, I hope Tim is proud of that, because Tim was working with me when we were running that together. So anyways, I decided, first I was talking to Claude, just chatting and asking, this is my situation. This is what I want to try to do. Can you help outline some of my options so that I could take all of these recorded videos, and there's like content index in there. It all lives in a spreadsheet that we maintain and keep up to date, but also then it links out to all the drive folders where all this content is. And it gave me a couple options, and I wanted it to be for searchability and like discoverability. So not only somebody to say like, oh, are there sessions on this topic or these keywords, but could it also surface some things maybe they didn't think about that could be relevant? So I was really excited about that. But as soon as I went to try to start like building it, it kept throwing this error. Suddenly I was like giving it a link to the spreadsheet, and it's like, oh, I can't build off of this because I can't publish because the account owner is different than the spreadsheet owner, and like this weird stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? So then I am asking it, where do I find this out? Who owns the account? It's my account. I don't understand. So anyways, I find out that it's the leader of IT from our parent company is the name on the true account. And for some reason, wanting to publish this up-to-date like app is different than all the other ways I've been using Claude and giving it drive links. So that's been like my big stopgap. And then I was even asking it, like, is it appropriate to ask your IT leader to give ownership of the account to me so that I can publish this? And I was like spiraling.
Help me draft an email. Help me.
I'm at that point.
Draft an email for you.
Yeah, but I'm really hoping I can do it, because to your point with the librarian, I'm like, we have so much content here that people never go and look at, but there's so much applicable stuff in there that I'm pointing people to it constantly. Like, oh, there was this one time we talked about it. Here you go. But
you said early on, like, which I think I've now learned, which is a little bit of an adjustment for me. I'm used to like, oh, I know how whatever this thing is works. So I sort of have the architecture, and here's how I'm going to plug in the pieces. And because I'm still learning, I'm finding myself often saying, this is the end result, and pushing myself to like articulate the outcome that I want. And then I will sit there and say, now I think I could approach it this way or that way. And, you tell me, like, actually, I had a case where I think it's pretty known out there, like Facts and Feelings is kind of drifting away. And so Squarespace was going to charge us a big old fee to re-up in a bit. And I was like, oh, well, we've already stripped the site down to just be like a splash page. So couldn't I just, it's just a simple page. Can I just have, Claude help me recreate it as a static HTML? I'll put it on Netlify. It won't cost me a thing, whatever. And so I said, hey, can I do this? Want to walk through it? What are the cases? And then it brought up a whole bunch of really good points about managing the timing on the DNS cutover that I hadn't thought about, which then sort of gave me like a much better plan before I kicked off to do it. But then I also learned, like, having it vibe code, trying to look at screen captures and inspect an existing page built on Squarespace, which has all sorts of added bloat on it. I still wound up doing a lot of inspection and CSS tweaking. Although even in the middle of that, I kicked Cowork off to go do some like DOM scraping to suss out some settings for me. So that whole, like, don't just assume what you know. Like, the chat ones are really nice to say, what might be the options? And should I use, Claude Code for this? Or, should I use Cowork? And at times it's come back and said, well, yes or no, and given the pros and cons. But when we talked to Rob Colley, a big thing he was pushing was like, you should go and build apps. And it's kind of funny being on the podcast with Michael, because I think we all would acknowledge that, Michael, you're tend to be a couple of steps ahead of us generally when it comes to what's the new things that are doing. So when Rob was talking about that on that episode, I was like, oh yeah, that's what Michael did with, like, literally building an app for us to do our back-end workflow for the show.
Yeah. So what was interesting about that was, obviously, like, running a podcast, there's all this stuff in the background that we do, which we don't need to get into. It's not that fascinating.
No, let's talk about it. Let me pull up the documentation.
Tim has a very detailed process document. I wasn't going to go
We'll be here
there
all night.
That's right.
It's all been transitioned into runbooks and Cowork. Yeah.
But the thing is like, the idea was, how do we both expand the capability for everybody to be part of that process, as well as take some of the stuff off of Tim's plate? I don't know that we've been effective at accomplishing either of those two goals, but the idea was to start a process, and also, like, experiment with AI as a result of that. But a couple of really interesting learnings from that. One was, I spent a lot of time up front writing documentation of, like, what I thought this app should be able to do, and actually was pretty unhappy with my design, if you will, or the architecture the first go around, because I was using ChatGPT to kind of help me write those and, like, think it through. And it was just, AI tends to do this thing where it kind of latches onto ideas, and it's real hard to get it to let go of them. And then it sort of gets all in the rest of the stuff, and it gets, it's sort of like what's that thing where, like, when you're cooking something, it changes state. So, like, an egg is cooked, you can't uncook the egg, right? It's sort of like that, feels like that with AI sometimes. Like, something gets in there and you can't uncook the egg. It's now like a different form, and it's just really in there with your ideas, and you just have to, like, tear it up and start over. So I was at that point. And so then I switched over to Claude because I was starting to use that a little more. And I was like, all right, this is a good first step with Claude. And I used a tool to design it, and using the design of it to do that. But the other thing I thought was kind of interesting was, it actually took me back into a learning process about specific things, because one of the pieces of the app is an integration with our Slack channel in the podcast. And I realized, like, as I was thinking through, like, how this would work, I really didn't know what was possible with Slack integrations, really. Like, I've seen some, but not a lot, and I've not done any development behind it. So, like, it was sort of a blind spot about, well, here's what I want, but, like, I'm not sure how much this is or is not should interact. And so working with the AI to kind of like even educate myself a little more about that was actually part of the process. So it's sort of like you hand stuff off to AI to go do, but actually you're getting educated a little bit along the way on this as well, because while you kind of know like what you're trying to get to, it's sort of like, well, do I even know what's possible? And that's actually pretty critical learning, because then that shows you like, oh, if I don't know what's possible, like the AI is not really extending my capabilities as far as they might be able to go if there was a more experienced hand. And this comes out, I think, when you do other kinds of work with AI. I was chatting with a CEO of a company a week or two ago, and they're like, yeah, I really love using AI and it's great, but I feel like it's not really ever helping me to like innovate that next step. Like it's not helping me kind of like go that one step further. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I get what you mean. So AI is really, it was a great experience. The app works really well. It actually looks pretty good too.
Can I ask about, because it's a little bit of a mystery to me. Like I get the coding part, but like ultimately this is an app that is hosted on Vercel. Like what is the actual, and you've done a few iterations because we have like sort of a feature request and bug tracker. And so I guess two questions. One, the actual, I get when you have code. I've got it when I'm in RStudio or I'm in VS Code, or I'm just asking for it to generate, and that's code. But when you have, what are you actually doing to get the code run and deployed somewhere? That's question one. Question two is, when you've made updates, is it discipline that it's touching specific sections of the code, or is it kind of going and like regenerating from scratch? And this is like reading Vin Stansel a year or two ago and the way it was being described. So that's a two-parter question.
So
I don't understand either one.
The cool thing I learned at the hackathon, well, and before that too, but the hackathon we did, which had better developers than me at it, was I learned more about how to use GitHub. And so I use GitHub pretty heavily. So basically when I do a coding project, basically my process is, and hey, listen, I'm not claiming anything here. So like, if this is totally whack and broken, well, you let us know in the comments, but this is what I do. I start a local folder. This is where the code is going to live on my computer. And then as it starts to develop into something, I then go create a GitHub repository, and then that code starts to live on that repository. And so basically for small projects like this, it starts locally and then moves to GitHub, and then GitHub becomes the versioning and the control. And then from there.
Okay. I'm just going to put a little, let's just call out that Michael did not explain how Git works well on that.
I don't know how Git works very well.
So I just want to put in the qualifier.
Yeah, no, I already qualified it. I was like, I don't really know. But
he did say it might be whack. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
He said
it might be whack. And what I mean by that is it's probably whack.
But that's the code. I mean, I publish from GitHub to GitHub pages for like web, but how does that go to
when you start up, so then basically there's sort of the DevOps piece of it, which is how do you take code that lives in GitHub and is maintained there in a repository and make it an app out on the web or wherever. So that's the DevOps piece, which is where you use something like in this case, use Vercel. And Vercel basically can go connect to your GitHub, get the code, deploy it. And basically, anytime you change GitHub, it automatically deploys to Vercel. And so you have an automatic deployment process. And so the Vercel interface stores all of your environment variables and all the stuff that makes all this work and all the API calls that go in and out. And so this app basically connects to Resend for email. Is the database living in? Where's the actual database with? The database is Neon, which is got bought by Databricks. So yeah, that lives out there. And so basically all this stuff is sort of interconnected already. You basically, when you write all this code, you're basically connecting all that stuff via API keys and stuff like that. And then the app knows when to call.
So Claude told you, okay, go make a Vercel account, enter these. Here's how you can go make a Neon account. And
yeah, basically. I mean, you can say to it, like, I want to use this versus that. so it might come to you and be like, well, this is an architectural decision. Do you want to use Supabase? Do you want to use Neon? Do you want to use Convex? Like, you can kind of say which one you want to use, or you have one you need to use and say that. So it's not like you can just use whichever one. So like, there's either other versions, like Vercel is one example, but I think there's many others that do the same thing. Like Replit, I think, probably does the same things. So yeah, since I know absolutely nothing, I just went with whatever Claude said. So that's where it lives.
Well, so so that's helpful, because I've got things that are published to GitHub pages and to Netlify, but it's just like static stuff. Same thing. If I do a new push to GitHub is gonna detect that, and it'll redeploy and kind of refresh it. But I was like, but that's always been like, that's just rendering Quarto or R Markdown or Hugo. But that's really helpful, because I was like, okay, but you're extending it, saying, well, there might be 2 or 3 different systems that all have to kind of play together.
Yeah. In the case of that app on the back end, there's about 5 or 6 systems or API calls that go out. So like, we have API calls out to different LLMs to process things within the app. It reads, we have an incoming email, and AI looks through those to evaluate, like, is this a good pitch or is this not a good pitch? Those kinds of things for us. So those are all things that are happening in the app. And then the email processing itself goes through a company called Resend, and, so on and so forth. So there's a bunch of those little things. But basically, all of those decisions get made back at the beginning when you're defining what it is this thing is going to do and how does that work. It's like, well, here's what happens. We get topics from the website. We get topics from emails. We get topics from our Slack channel. Now we need to bring those all together in one place so we can evaluate those topics and make decisions about them.
So what you're saying is, my earlier app library for this guild is laughable, because I have a lot of steps I'm going to have to still go figure out. Well, I wasn't even thinking like, I'm going to have to probably connect it to GitHub and do this. But like, I don't know. The example you're saying is giving me thought of like, I have quite a few pieces to put together in this puzzle.
There's a nice little Fable anecdote that you have when like you asked, was it Fable? What is it? Yeah, Fable, that you asked to say, hey, could you evaluate this? Because it's got a pretty low level authentication path.
Yeah, when Fable 5 first came out, I had to look at the code base for that app. Not with anything. I was just like, I'm thinking of making some changes. Could you evaluate this code base and give me your thoughts? And so Fable is pretty well known as being like a pretty high end AI, or like pretty state of the art right now. And it immediately identified 3 security flaws in that app, which we then patched immediately. So it's like, oh yeah, well, before we do anything, here's 3 things that are broken about your app. I was like, well, your little brother's the one that coded it. So
we escalated that, because this is a podcast. You could bring the podcast production process down.
Bring it to a screeching halt.
I don't know if that was actually what was the problem, but there were like a couple of things that definitely should have been fixed, and we did fix them. But that's sort of an emerging thing. And also one of the things, like, I'm over here doing experimentation with things like Hermes, which is an agentic AI that kind of is like doing ongoing AI tasks for me on different things. And like, this is actually an area of big concern, which is the security piece of that. So like, setting that up is, I'm super cautious about that, because like, that doesn't live on my local network. It lives far away on an external box that is not attached to me at all. It cannot access certain things. It cannot write things in certain places. So basically, I keep it pretty pinned down for now, because I just don't, as I learn, I don't want to be exposing like my work and all these things to an AI agent that may then just go dump all that information on the first, random hacker that gets the opportunity to kind of, prompt inject it with something that it thinks is cool. So like, there's some real risks out there with AI too, which, I'm trying to be cautious of, but still also experiment around and have a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's the luxury, like, it is kind of nice sandbox. We're not having it crunch a bunch of data, but there is a lot, because what I tackled was, I said, we have this lengthy 40-page document of our process that should be something. I have a background as a technical writer. I've kept it maintained. Throw it in and let cowork run with it, to do everything, because we record, a little bit of stuff happens, things go off to Tony to do the editing. He sends back like a final file, and that's like the starting point for a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen. And that's documented in the steps. And we had several of us who were like, we can do this process. I do it most of the time, but we had a couple other people with fallback. It's a Google Doc, knew how to do it, threw it into co-work, and a couple of things have emerged. Like, one, how many steps there are that like human in the loop, partly because, you got to go click somewhere that it's just not going to go click on its own. More so, I need to check in and have you pick which tags we're going to put on the show. I'll recommend these, or these the right ones, or these are 3 options for the show blurb, because frankly, I don't think the show, we've written enough by hand. We have enough training. We can now use it to write that copy. And it is now the 2 things that have kind of emerged. One, what used to be an hour and a half of focused time that was not enjoyable at all and subject to me making mistakes by not completely following the process. Now it's like an 8-hour duration, because it's super slow cranking through some stuff. And I just have to wait till I hear the little beep and then go in and check, what I need to rely on. And for some reason, I've never been able to get Claude Dispatch to work, because I was like, this is the perfect application of, I'm going to go meet someone for coffee. This thing's running. If it just needs me to say go, never could get that. I have not gotten that to work on my phone. So one, that was interesting to say, yeah, this is kind of a grind of work to do, but it's stuff that a human has to do. So that was kind of validating. The other is, it's wild to watch it take different paths to do the same task each time. Like, there are times where it's like, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to try this other thing. Well, that didn't work. And I watch it be super inefficient as it finds its way to do the thing. So it still has that probabilistic LLM thing going, that it's not a rules-based, it's more robust. So if a UI slightly changes, it's probably going to figure it out. But on the other hand, where exactly it sort of runs into problems is kind of a moving target each time. So
what you could do, Tim, is you could write a skill for it. So you could give it. You can give it the steps.
Well, but I've given it the steps in co-work. Like, it has a run book that is like, do this, then do this. I mean, but it's very detailed.
That's different than sort of like process steps. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's not a good application. I don't know. I'm just getting.
I should probably go to Claude Chat and say, I've done this, and this is the challenge I'm running into, and how could this be addressed? Is this something Skills would help with? I love doing that when I don't understand something. I'm like, hey, would Skills work for this? And it'll come back and be like, yeah, you ding dong. Like, why weren't you using Skills from the get-go? That's a good Skills segue, because you've been playing around with Skills.
Yeah,
Claude, right?
I have. Well, because in a couple of cases, our clients are using AI, and so we're helping them do that. And one of the things I noticed when LLMs work with data, they tend to sort of fall victim to some very common pitfalls when doing analysis. Like certain types of analyses, I think they do different things, and it's sort of challenging to kind of get them to not do that. Like, one of the things I noticed right away was like comparing 2 things to try to evaluate what was different between these 2 things. It would sort of come up with its own idea. Like, sometimes it would just make it up, and then it would just sort of hang on to that idea as if it was like totally rock solid. That's the answer. And I would go back and be like, no, that's not the answer. That's something you made up, and we got to throw that away, or just hold that to the side for a minute. Maybe it's the answer, but maybe it's not. We don't have enough data to say that's the answer. And of course, you know how AI is. It's like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm definitely not going to do that again. And then it would just go do it again, and it would just do it over. And so it was like, okay, I'm out. So that got me thinking, like, well, what if I gave it a better set of instructions? And so I started building out a set of skills for different types of analysis to sort of say, okay, if I was sitting down to do this analysis, how would I break this problem down? There is a bunch of great literature and technique and methods all published. Like there's a ton of material that it could be drawing on, and it just isn't doing it. And the other thing I noticed is that all of the data skills that are out there, a lot of them have to do with like accessing tools or making a PowerPoint presentation or making a visualization. It's like, okay, that's all very handy. I'm talking about like just doing the analysis of the data. So I'm working through a process. We're still very early stages where I built some skills for that. We're doing some testing. What I'm learning in that process is two things. One is using those analysis skills is producing a better result on average than just the raw LLM. And that's pretty cool and very awesome. But doing evals on skills to prove that they're working the way you want them to work is a ton of work. It's like so much work. So like and you have to be super structured about it, and you have to make sure like the prompts are set up correctly and everything's done the right way. So like you can actually evaluate like the outputs and know that it's like got it right. So like we still have a long way to go, but I'm hopeful that over time we'll actually develop something that's going to be at least convenient, if not useful in some cases. I think the challenge there is that at the end of the day, I don't think an LLM can actually produce the quality of analysis or meaningful analysis that I would then go and say, like, this is what you should do instead of having humans do it. I just don't think you can replace it. But I know that humans are going into AIs every single day and asking it to analyze data. And in light of that, maybe we should try to build something that makes it less bad. So in the old George Box framework, all models are broken, but some are useful. That's sort of what we're shooting for here.
All models are wrong.
All models are wrong. Yeah, there you go.
And Macrosoft just got triggered because he's like, whatever it is, you're not using it right.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to use it wrong both ways. That was on purpose.
Wait, can you share what type of analysis you're talking about? That like one of the ones you're working on a skill for? I'm just curious.
You cannot use EDA.
Sure. So root cause analysis or or a prescriptive analysis or so like different types of analyses. So like there's sort of a list or a library of like a bunch of them. And yeah, some of them are ones that Tim is not very happy that I'm doing.
Metric reconciliation.
Question refinement.
Causal impact.
Yeah, causal, inference or impact. So like all the ones that like in a business context, there's a better level, but most of the time people don't put the work in to do. It'd be nice if your LLM was like, hey, here's what the data is saying, but I think the next step here is actually some kind of holdout test to really prove this. Instead of just
like knowing that threshold.
Instead of just telling you what you want to hear, which is what the LLM would do without the instruction. Because it picks up on things like the way you ask the question. Like if you're asking a question with an idea that like, hey, can we stop spending spending money on Meta this month? It's going to pick up from that question that like, you'd like to stop spending money on Meta this month. And now it's going to do the analysis and come back to you with something that makes you happy, whether that's good for the business or not, because there's underlying that is this instruction set that the LLM is doing on its own, which has nothing to do with your analysis and more about how it wants to make you happy. And that's sort of like what we're fighting against a little bit, because when you do analysis, you're not trying to make someone happy. You're trying to get to a closest version to reality that the data will support. So it's a little bit different exercise. And so it takes the LLM, instead of telling it like, now behave, it says, hey, here's the literature, here's the methods, go through these steps and use this as a floor, as opposed to like how you're doing it the other way.
When I feel like if like, you're asking me to do a root cause analysis, the skill of the root cause analysis is to say, I'm going to go do a quick exploratory data analysis of this before. Like, given the time and the capacity, you should always check that the data doesn't have nonsensical stuff in it where it's super easy, super common for somebody to say, we've been using this data forever, or somebody handed it to me and told me it was clean. And so they just go straight to, running a regression. Whereas some of that, and I could also see it requiring some qualification of the, from the user, but that's been my hobby horse that I think is valuable to. They ask a question and they get a very polite but reasoned set of focusing and clarifying questions back.
Yeah. And not always sort of like a easy answer, but like, okay, well, there's more work to do to actually get the answer you want. And it's like, okay, well, no one's going to accept that. So we got to tune it more. So just kidding.
Funny enough, not on the list of types of analyses you mentioned, but I guess I would count it as a type of analysis. I had pulled together a proposal for a client. And long story short, there's a bit of like a pause. And so we wanted to send over the proposal for our direct stakeholder and her boss to understand like, hey, when things change on your end and you can revisit this, like, here's what we're proposing, valuable to outline that story. And we wanted to close it out with like an impactful value slide, right? So me as the strategist on the account is in charge of that. So, I mean, we've done the exercise manually. I have people at the company. I was talking to Matt Padone about it. Ways that he's gone about pulling something like this together. And so I didn't have a lot of time and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to use Claude to help me here, because really what I needed to grab and make some assumptions about what this program could help drive for the business, for, leadership that we were trying to talk to, was like public financials, right? And like, that's a slog to go through on your own. So I'm like, I'm going to give it an example of information we've pulled before when we try to pull together these like value estimates. And I pretty much gave it context to say, here is who we are working with. Here's the situation. Here's what we're proposing. This is the area of the business that we would be working with. This is the impact we believe that we could drive for them through this work we're proposing. And it was maybe a long paragraph, like a couple run-on sentences, nothing crazy. Gave it one link, and I asked it to help pull public financials to help me make some assumptions and give a value estimate. And it spit out a 6-tab spreadsheet, which I was a little like, wow, overkill. That's what I'm also finding. I've asked it for like one slide before, gives me like 7. I'm like, whoo, all right. But it did a pretty good job. I mean, I was able to go and find too, like, where it was pulling numbers from. It did automatically give me pretty descriptive, like, this is where this number is from. It highlighted cells that it was making assumptions on. It gave me like industry benchmarks that I didn't actually ask for those explicitly, along with the client's actual published numbers. And then I was able to work through it once I understood the spreadsheet setup though, and play with how I wanted to craft the narrative. But it was interesting because I now know the next time I go to do this, I would prompt it in much more detail, because again, I have a better idea of like how I want the spreadsheet to function and the things I want to be able to like input. So I do think if I get more explicit or even dip into like what you're saying, Michael, and build like a skill around this for it, that it could be a really super useful tool. And then I definitely have to work on the visualization of it because it needs the human touch there for sure. Tim was helping me today. I slacked him out. I was like, I'm running myself in circles. Like, I just need a clean brain to help me edit this story to like what the hell actually matters. So it's been good though for that type of thing. I worry like when you talk to it goes bloated, it goes along, and then you look at it and it's really hard to fully wrap your head around. And it was interesting, even in the spreadsheet, there were cases where it had just like done the math and hard coded it. So it wasn't even like a traceable model in some cases. It was in some cases. But I mean, that continues, like the higher level, like it's so fast to generate content that's polished and professional, but doesn't have the humanness in it. And I think in a proposal context, like somebody's going to be looking at it and they're going to be asking questions, regardless of what it is, not your specific example there. I had a case
where I'm doing some training, working with another company, and for various reasons, I'm developing the presentation in Quarto. It's very specific to the audience, but I also am pretty particular about, I don't want things to look great. And it turns out when you're trying to use Markdown, I mean, I've run through this before, but I worked with the people who were kind of co-presenting, and we had kind of a rough, we'd iterated through a Google Doc where we really sort of figured out the narrative and the story. And that was like collaboratively. And then I went through the Google Doc and put a little more meat behind it. And then I was like, what happens if I pop over to Fable 5 and say, generate me and I did this in Claude Code. I already had a repo set up for it and had pulled it down locally and said, give me the shell. And that was really useful as like the raw, because I fed in this is the sequence. These are the specific slides, and they still look like absolute, garbage. Like I've spent hours after that needing to iterate, but I still had that skeleton in place. So I wasn't having to start one slide at a time. I have the whole shell, but it came from a human massage, developed the narrative and the talk and the points and the highlights. But it was another kind of useful Claude Code experience in that case.
I see Claude like decks that get put together and it's like a standalone slide is pretty good. And sometimes they'll pick up on like maybe the main story point you wanted, like throughout this, like, again, like bloated long deck that it will put together. But you know what's funny, Tim? I always go back to like just the basic McKinsey title idea. And it's like, I need to start telling people to explicitly tell Claude or whatever LLM they're using to be like, use McKinsey titles. I think the outline from a human before asking it to make the deck should be like, this is the story bullet points in this order that I want you to tell. Use it for McKinsey title style and say like, this needs to make sense like top to bottom. Because when I get into a deck that is like Claude generated, for example, it's like, okay, generally this slide makes sense. I kind of understand what they're saying, but to me, it doesn't seem like there's a good thread between, and it's like verbose and it's repetitive. And then it's really hard for me personally to figure out what is the point of this individual slide I'm looking at.
But that not that hard to tell Claude to say, you must walk me through, make sure you have a solid outline. I'm going to define the steps of how we're going to do this. You're going to make sure I give you McKinsey titles. I did have a rant like a month or so ago on LinkedIn because I was literally, I should remember what I was working on. And it said, I have handcrafted a bespoke, beautifully structured 5-slide presentation in HTML and CSS. It uses clean, high-impact management consulting layouts like McKinsey or BCG decks designed specifically for your topic. And I'm like, this is horrible. So that's rant one. Like, I was like, yes, this is what you think is great. The other, like, just boogaboo. I was trying to generate HTML presentations with like R Markdown way back when. Had one specific client where every week during COVID, we had to pull all these data sources together and generate it. I'm like, I can make all this happen with in R and pull together something that matches your template. It's just, you're ultimately going to send it as a PDF anyway. And I just got hammered. It's like, it's gotta be in PowerPoint because we got to be able to edit it. And I was like, I understand the motivation and you need it. Whereas now everybody's like, wee, I can just make it in HTML. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck you. Like yep. It wasn't good enough when I wanted to make something in HTML because it wasn't just being spit out, generically. It looked fine. So
yeah,
okay, I'm sorry.
It's weird with all the things I'm willing to let AI do for me. The thing I'm least willing to let it do is produce content or communication. So we even have at Stacked Analytics now kind of a standard, like we will not let it write our emails. I like that. I won't let it write decks. Like technical documentation, I think it's actually okay at and can produce good quality materials. But like anything where I'm attached to what the person is reading in terms of a communication, I just don't think it's there yet. Like, and I'm training it on my voice and those kinds of things. And I keep testing, but I'm just not comfortable with it. And I just feel it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Stevia, that weird aftertaste. Just,
That is so good, Michael. That is exactly what it is.
It's just, I don't get it and I don't like it. And so if I don't like it, then I assume other people probably don't appreciate it either. So it's sort of like, all right, so then the least we can do is like, it's going to be us typing that email.
I have given it like content. I'm like, I need a McKinsey title that describes this, and this, and give it a long
if
thing.
You take it,
and then I wind up edit it
yourself.
Then I have to edit it.
Yeah. I think that's totally fine. It's more of like something that spits out and you just paste it into your email and fire it off. Like, I don't like it. Well, it's not good yet.
Once it does like a deck for you, again, we talked about this in past episodes, like you become the editor of work that's in front of you, but sometimes like it's so much easier to just give in that like, it's good enough because I didn't think through what it needed to be already.
Yeah.
Like because you didn't try to solve it, now you've been biased by what it spit out. And I will say when I've really only a handful of times have had it made any type of slide, but I have heavily edited anything that it gives me. Because to your point, Michael, I'm like, I know I can structure a better slide that will get the point across. But sometimes I do need like, can you just give me a couple ideas here and like pull what I like and I'll mash it together.
That I think is just fine. That's just fine. It's more the other side of it where it's sort of like you just turn your brain off and it's like, is that good enough? I don't think that's good enough because anyone could do that. The client could do that. Like as a consultant, like I hope we're bringing more to the table than just regurgitating whatever Claude said.
Yes.
Ideally.
Make it a BCG or McKinsey style email.
The problem is sometimes when I write my own version and I've seen what it writes, I'm like, my version sucks. But at the same time, it's like, but it's yours. Like,
you're like,
but it's me.
It's me. So, everybody just bear with me. I'm not as smart as an AI, but, I'm trying. All right.
I love it.
One last thing I want to cover off on, because it was a big kind of learning for me, is obviously using these LLMs for me has been a lot of fun and very learning experience. One of the big things that happened recently in the last 6 months with us is going from an individual using Claude to do stuff on a certain project to a number of people needing to engage with that same thing. And like, how do you share the information and context and those kinds of things? And we all like we're on data background. So like in data warehouses, everyone's like, oh, you got to have a semantic layer so the AI knows how to do all the things it needs to do. And so that's been a very interesting challenge. I don't claim to have solved it, but we're very much looking at that too, which is keep iterating on this idea of how do we deploy context? Because there's like so many different little decisions go into when you're setting up data. Like, okay, we're going to tweak it just like this so that these things match up. And we're going to make this decision at this point to kind of normalize the data like this. Like all of those choices are filtering down into then other people making it harder to follow in your footsteps. And so it's interesting because we've done some various things to sort of share that context more broadly, but that's something I'm keeping an eye on in our space, especially in the data space, because like, I think that's really common, is sort of like, how are people making this a team sport versus an individual effort? Cause I think that's a pretty big deal.
A little bit of a callback. I started to say we had this document for the podcast, so it's not on the data front. And I set this up in Cowork. It was somewhere along there that I realized that, the runbooks are stored locally, which I'm like, that is terrifying. Now it's going into a folder that I have syncing somewhere else, but I'm much more comfortable with stuff being in like defined cloud, whether I'm syncing to GitHub with Git or whether it's Google Cloud or whatever. But I started to say that we had something that I could hand off if I wasn't available. We had backups that could follow the process and it was fairly safe. And now somehow with Cowork, I'm like, can I hand this off? Like I don't know that in theory I've handed it off to this agent, but I can't figure out how I could safely hand it off, especially knowing that I will hit things that say, I need to update the task and the instructions here and there. So it's a similar world that you're like, oh, this supercharges you, but it doesn't necessarily supercharge the team in the way that it should.
And I think I feel like that's the big lever or tipping point to value for AI in a lot of organizations. It's sort of like you've got one or two people kind of doing stuff over in the corner that's making them real productive. But like, how do you create a process for AI usage that makes everyone that much more productive and step up the whole org with AI? Like, this is actually the whole part, I think a big part of it. And it's actually a truly complex, I think very deep problem that I don't know that I've seen anybody really solve well. And given your recent LinkedIn post and the feedback you got on it, like I see a lot of other people, especially in the data space, because like it's not a technology problem at the end of the day. It's actually like a human process problem, and how you solve it goes into your culture, it goes into your process, it goes into all these different things. So anyways, that's a fun one to sort of unwind, but also kind of like the frontiers that we're finding in using AI in the day to day. It's sort of like, oh, I did all this cool stuff. Now, how do I hand this work off to my teammate who now or my client who now needs to take this stuff and go one step further with it? What do I do?
Oof.
So so you got to find answers. So we've built some things to do that, but it's I don't know that it's like, it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all yet. And I don't think with AI you can be perfect. So you just have to kind of be adaptive. Anyway, all right. Any last words, final thoughts?
Oh, we're right.
Are we,
that was a good one to leave off on.
Are we fine? Are we good?
Like the LLMs, we're running along.
Yeah, that's right. Verbose. All right. Well, then let's.
Hey, but Michael,
yeah,
that was an excellent point. You did a great job. This has been, every point you made was just so spot on. Sorry, I'm being like AI.
I don't appreciate that at all, Tim.
That's
the kind of fluff that I don't appreciate.
You're absolutely right.
You're absolutely right. That's the load-bearing comment of the podcast, Tim. Great job. All right. I bet as you've been listening to this episode, you're like, wow, I can't believe how terrible the Analytics Power Hour is at AI already. And you've got thoughts and comments. Listen, we're open to learning a little more. So this one, we do actually want to hear from you. Like, tell us how you're using it. Talk about what you're doing with it. Like, we want to know. Or at least I do. So you can reach out to us. Do that on the Measure Slack chat group or on LinkedIn or via email at contact@analyticshour.io. And check in with us. Tell us how you're using AI in your day to day. I think it's a pretty wide open space, and we're all learning from each other, which is a lot of fun. It reminds me of the early days of analytics, to be honest, where we're kind of all just sort of comparing notes. And back then it was Yahoo.
Remember that time with like web trends and like the report tables and the analysis tables, and how you could call up web trend and remember that? Sorry.
And you can also get stickers, because nothing says you're cool like a sticker on your laptop or water bottle from the Analytics Power Hour. And you can request that on our website at analyticshour.io. And I think no matter how you're using AI, or even how you're using AI to listen to this podcast, I think I speak for both of my co-hosts, Tim and Julie, when I say, don't stop analyzing. Even if the AI offers to do it for you, you've got to stay involved.
Thanks for listening. Let's keep the conversation going with your comments, suggestions, and questions on Twitter at Analytics Hour, on the web at analyticshour.io, our LinkedIn group, and the Measure Chat Slack group. Music for the podcast by Josh Crowhurst.
Those smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Do the analytics say go for it no matter who's going for it? So if you and I were on the field, the analytics say go for it. It's the stupidest, laziest, lamest thing I've ever heard for reasoning in competition.
Say it all. You never
Tony,
know.
do not put that. Do not put that out.
There we
Okay,
go.
wait. Ready, Michael? We're going to self-diagnose your head pain.
Why?
Hang on. Just trust me.
Yeah, it's good. It's
All right.
Good, fine. Okay, window. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
So these are the different types of headaches. Is it a hypertension, a migraine, a stress, or is it a data sits under IT type of pain?
That's good. It's kind of it sits under IT.
It's got that kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Michael, I was literally sitting with a sinus infection last week. So I was like, oh, before I knew it. And I was like, oh, it's like right behind my eyes, but low. And so I see this on LinkedIn. I mean, I should have known. And I'm like self-diagnosing myself with it until I got to the end.
That's good. Yeah, no, it's the migraine one, but yeah, that's pretty funny. That's good. Yeah, I need to keep that in the back pocket because that's that one keeps coming up.
Yep.
an episodic, recurrently episodic.
No matter how much Tylenol you take. Okay. All right.
And are we doing last calls?
I don't think so. I'm picking up something from our nope. From our producer.
I don't know. It's comical.
Keep it for next week.
Yeah.
The Venn diagram between what Julie reads and what I read is.
Well, who do you think, sent me all those newsletters?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I do have a kid who's, planning trips out in October, and he's super laid back and chill, and he doesn't get bothered if somebody can't make a decision. He's like, well, here's the deadline, and if you haven't made it by then, you're out. And he just moves on with his life. I'm like, if I could get his attitude,
Just an ounce.
I would probably live 10 years longer due to the hypertension that is not developed.
Data still sits under IT.
Yay.
All right. Let's do this. Here we go.
It's all right.
Energy.
Me, my, mo, my, moo, moo, me, my. You know the
Quick, brown
vocals.
fox jumped over the lazy
Jumps
dog.
over the lazy brown dog. Rock Flag and Stevia.